We saw last time how Lyell used his uniformity principle to manufacture millions of years of geological time. The scientific establishment loves vast numbers of years because it makes evolution seem possible. George Wald, who we met in some earlier episodes, said, "The time with which we have to deal is of the order of 2 billion years. What we regard as impossible on the basis of human experience is meaningless here. Given so much time, the impossible becomes possible, the possible becomes probable, and the probable virtually certain. One only has to wait. Time itself performs the miracles." As we saw in parts 17 to 19, even the 15 billion years touted by the cosmologists is nowhere near enough to make even the tiniest dent in the impossibility of evolution. But the establishment would rather not know and carry on pretending that time performs miracles. Biology can carry on with its real job, finding out about the marvels of the creatures of this miraculous creation, no matter what they speculate about how things came into being. Those amazing creatures would be exactly the same whether the textbook said they were created by a creator, or by millions of years of evolution, or for that matter, by a wave of the fairy queen's magic wand. But there are times when it actually matters whether those millions of years are fact or myth. One such situation was when the engineering department of Louisiana State University was looking into a serious problem: storing dangerous nuclear waste from nuclear power plants. Those wastes remain dangerous for hundreds of thousands of years. It matters whether all those years are true or not. Safe design requires looking back into the past for at least as long as the waste will remain dangerous. What was the greatest earthquake, the greatest storm, the worst flood that happened in the area where the waste is to be stored? As we'll see in future episodes, there are many observations which contradict vast numbers of years. So many that the Louisiana Engineering Department called a meeting of experts in geological and astronomical time to see how reliable those millions of years really are. Surprisingly, the scientific establishment didn't ban the paper, which gave the results of that investigation. Perhaps they let it through because they realized a nuclear waste spill could do them even more damage than a truth spill. We haven't time to look at all the presentations at the conference, but let's hear from one of the experts on geochronology, one on astrochronology, and the summing up of the conference. Robert Gentry, a leader in the field, looked at radio halo analysis. This analysis looks at the nuclear decay of radioactive atoms like uranium. At each stage of the decay, a particle or a quantum of radiation shoots out of the atom. The distance it travels into the surrounding rock depends on its energy. So the radioactive atoms end up being surrounded by spheres where the ejected particles stopped. This is a record of the actual decay process. If we know the half-lives of the various stages of decay, and if we assume that decay rates have always been the same, we can calculate a probable time duration. Dr. Gentry said in his address, "If isotope ratios are to be used as a basis for geological dating, then presently accepted ages may be too high by a factor of 10,000. Thus, ages of the entire stratigraphic column may contain epochs less than 0.01% of the duration of those now accepted and found in the literature." Notice that he raises doubts about the isotope ratios being useful for dating at all. This isn't really surprising. Frederick Germaneman, for example, noted, There has been in recent years the horrible realization that radio decay rates are not as constant as previously thought, nor are they immune to environmental influences. And this could mean that the atomic clocks are reset during some global disaster, and events which brought the Mesozoic to a close may not be 65 million years ago, but rather within the age and memory of man. So it doesn't look as if geochronology is very reliable. And what about cosmochronology? Perhaps the top expert on the sun at the time was John A. Eddy. In his presentation, he pointed out that attempts to get a definite age for the sun, or even to find out what's going on in the sun, had simply proved that their theories are almost certainly wrong. He summed up by saying, "I suspect that the sun is 4.5 billion years old. However, given some new and unexpected results to the contrary, and some time for frantic readjustment, I suspect that we could live with Bishop Ussher's value for the age of the Earth and Sun. I don't think we have much in the way of observational evidence in astronomy to conflict with that." Bishop Ussher's value, which he deduced from the Bible, was just over 6,000 years. We might ask, why should we trust the suspicions of fallible scientists who've often been wrong in the past, rather than the Bible? As Douglas Jones pointed out, the odd thing is that science has such a ridiculous track record to serve as such a powerful veto house of truth. If we think in terms of centuries and millennia, few other disciplines turn inside out so flippantly and quickly as the natural sciences. Nothing can take the puff out of the scientific chest more than a study of its history. Perhaps that's why it's so rare to find science departments requiring courses in the history of science. The history of science provides great strength to the inductive inference that at any point in its history, that day's science will almost certainly be deemed false, if not laughable, within a century, often in much less time. This confirms Euler's warnings that even the most respected scientists are subject to humiliating weaknesses and inconsistencies, and that a revelation was absolutely necessary to us, and we ought to avail ourselves of it with the most powerful veneration. Raphael Kasman, the convener of the conference, concluded, "Cosmochronology and geochronology are far from reliable in yielding ages. Structures or designs that were based on such determinations would be questionable, if not downright hazardous." Well, next time, let's look at some of the observations showing just how questionable those millions of years really are. Thank you for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and press the bell so that you'll be notified as I release new movies. If you'd like to support this project, you're welcome to do so through Patreon. Find a link on my channel banner and in the description below.